I want to do a little study on one of the biblical feasts, particularly as we've had Passover, we're coming towards Pentecost, and this particular study is on the Feast of Weeks, known as Shavuot. Each of the biblical feasts celebration comes with its own set of scriptural instructions, tried traditions, weird and wonderful costumes. The Feast of Tabernacles signals 7 joyous days of dwelling in temporary booths, and Purim, the Feast of Esther. That means dressing up in dazzling costumes. On Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year, you get the piercing calls of countless ram's horns, shofars, resounding through the whole of the Promised Land. While at Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, is full of candle lights and eating sweet things that have been cooked in olive oil. Passover, unleavened bread, matzah, and of course Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, is no different. Shavuot commemorates a watershed moment in Jewish history. God giving his instructions to the Jewish people, the Torah, to Israel on Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago. You see, today the descendants of those who stood around that shaken mountain marks a holiday by spending the evening wide awake, poring over God's instructions. After a night of being awake and reading and studying the Torah, the throng of tired men wrapped in their prayer shawls pour out of the synagogues and the yeshivas, the religious centres of study. They flock to the Western Wall in Jerusalem for prayer at dawn, to where they thank God for the gift of Torah. And then back at home for dinner, the family and friends gather round for a feast of the best dairy products, treats that Israel can offer. They dine on quiche and pastries and salad and feta cheese, and then cheesecake, lovely cheesecake. Then another Shavuot tradition, Israel reads the book of Ruth. Why Ruth? Why do they read about the Moabite widow on a holiday commemorating the events on Mount Sinai? See, Ruth's story is one of the most loved beauty for ashes tales in the scriptures, and for good reason. A recently widowed Moabite princess turns her back on her people, her gods, culture and country, and security and comfort, and guarantee plenty, to follow her Israelite mother-in-law into a future of uncertainty. Barely enough. But with these famous words from Ruth 1 verse 16, and I'm reading it from the Living Bible, verse 16, and it says, "And Ruth replied, 'Don't make me leave you. I want to go wherever you go, to live wherever you live. Your people shall be my people, your God shall be my God.'" Amazing words. The impoverished pair arrive in Bethlehem during the barley harvest, where Ruth takes to the fields to glean leftover grain after the reapers. She catches the eye of the well-to-do Boaz, in whose field she happened to be gleaning, and who happens to be her kinsman redeemer. Boaz marries Ruth, redeeming her, and Naomi from uncertainty to a future of security, comfort, and guaranteed plenty. Naomi is blessed with a grandchild, and the widow from Moab becomes the great-grandmother of King David. Devastating tragedy, epic romance, a fierce redeeming love. No wonder the story of Ruth is a firm favourite. Still, where is the connection in between Shavuot and Ruth? You see, Shavuot means weeks in Hebrew. 7 weeks, 49 days after Passover. The name is thus chronologically describing the time span between one festival and the next, and the close correlation between the two feasts. During the 7-week period, Israel progressed from a nation of former slaves delivered by God's outstretched arm of God from the cruel oppression of Pharaoh to the foot of Mount Sinai, about to receive the Torah as the Almighty's treasure possession. Both festivals also have an agricultural connection. You see, Passover marks the beginning of the barley harvest, while Shavuot signals ripened wheat ready for reaping and gathering. You see, on the second day of Passover, Israel brought the first Omer. Now, an Omer is a measure, a biblical measure. So they brought an Omer of barley to the temple as an offering. Well, Shavuot means the first fruit offering from the wheat harvest. Okay, keep up with me. For this reason, the 29-day stretch between the two feasts of Passover and Shavuot is known as counting the Omer, and marks a progression from barley, a coarse grain used for feeding animals, to wheat, which is ideal for human nourishment. This is where the connection between Ruth and Shavuot begins. See, Ruth arrived in Bethlehem during the barley harvest and started the process of gleaning the coarse, lowly grain. But in the end, she reaps untold blessing. Israel's great shepherd king thus represents that perfect process his great-grandmother began from barley to wheat. The birth of something new, something great and worthy. It's often rough, coarse and lowly, progressing from slavery to the point of receiving from the very hand of God, entails a commitment, like that the Moabite widow, willingly to glean barley, to the ultimate reaping wheat. Yet the connection between Ruth and Shavuot goes even deeper still. The events surrounding the giving of the Torah unfolds quite dramatically. See, according to Exodus 19, the morning dawned with great peals of thunder, lightning strikes, then a blanket of thick dark cloud, deafening booms of a trumpet. God's presence covered Mount Sinai with smoke that was like a furnace, and the mountain quaked greatly. Trembling at this fearsome sight, the Israelites panicked at the prospects of hearing from God firsthand and sent Moses up the shaken mountain to receive his instructions on their behalf. When Moses returned, he said this. Exodus 24, verse 3. Then Moses announced to the people all the laws and regulations God had given him, and the people answered in unison, we will obey them. And verse 7, and he read to the people the book he had written, the book of the covenant, containing God's directions and law. And the people said again, we solemnly promise to obey every one of these rules. Israel's response was one of those famous phrases in the Torah. In verse 7, it talks about we will do and we will understand. It's the order of importance that we will do and then we will understand. That we will hear what God tells us and then we will do that before we understand really. You see, in the scriptures and through sort of Middle Eastern eyes, when the Lord says hear, he's not asking you really to go, what? I'm listening. He's asking for action. Hear my words and do it. You know, when I come home and I say to Eva, oh, Eva, can you pop the kettle on, please? What am I saying? My darling wife, please would you make me a cup of tea? I'm just not asking her to flick the kettle on and walk away. And I'll be sat there wondering where my cup of tea was. No. This is Middle Eastern thinking. So the order of importance. Israel did not pledge to figure out God's instructions before they acted on them. They did not undertake to understand the whats, the whys, and the wherefores of God's directive before they would work them out. This is what they said. When we stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, we promised to do what and as God commands. As a result of doing, we would understand. So on Shavuot, Israel accepted that yoke of uncertainty and unknown to embark on a journey with God. That's what Ruth did too. She told Naomi, wherever you go, I'll go. Your people will be my people, without knowing where they were heading and who they would meet when they got there. She had the courage to embark on a journey of uncertainty and the unknown, regardless of where that journey would lead. That is the ability to walk in obedience first, then understanding. The ability to walk in obedience first, and then understanding. Friends, this is the secret of Shavuot, and that was the secret of Ruth. Amen.